I get all of the emails that you get and you send out pretty frequently, which are extremely helpful.
Cool.
And like I said, I learned about you through Future, and then I started watching your content a little bit more.
Hmm.
And I thought the approach that you go with pricing makes so much sense.
Yeah,
It's just stupid to do the hourly pricing model, and I've done that, of course. And so I
sure.
wanted
Yeah.
to bring you, yeah, I wanted to bring you on, introduce yourself, and kind of tell us what you do.
Sure. Yeah. I am Jonathan Stark, and I'm a former software developer who's now on a mission to rid the world of hourly billing. So, yeah, I've got a podcast called Ditching Hourly, another one with a co host called The Business of Authority. I published a book in 2016 called Hourly Billing is Nuts. And like you said, I have a daily newsletter on pricing for independent professionals.
Yeah, and I guess my first question to you is, why are you so passionate about that topic specifically?
Sure. I mean, back in 2005 or so, I was the VP of a software firm. We had about 10 developers, and we billed ourselves out at an hourly rate. It was $150 an hour blended rate. Everybody was billed out at the same amount. And it occurred to me one day that our best developer was, he was probably making 90 grand, and he was really good and really fast. He didn't need to do things two and three times. So we're barely breaking even on his salary because we could hardly keep him busy. And then on the other hand, and that seemed fine. It was a delightful employee, amazing guy, all that stuff. It was just like, okay, there's that fact. But then we had someone who was almost like an intern, sort of a junior developer who made half of the salary of our best developer, and he had to do things over and over. It took him a long time to get things done. Something that would take me an hour, or I would guess would take an hour, would take him 10 hours. But he had a great bedside manner. His clients were perfectly happy. And we were kind of like making way more money off this developer who was just learning the ropes. And I just couldn't get my head around that. It just wasn't right. Like there was something wrong with it, and I couldn't figure it out. I thought about it for weeks, doing all this mental gymnastics of like, well, our best developer, he helps train other people. And I'm like, but wait a second, that just makes them better and faster. So we make less money. I just couldn't figure it out. And it took me a long time before I even questioned that it was the billing model, the hourly billing piece. As soon as you change that, as soon as you switch it to some sort of fixed pricing, in my case, value pricing, then instantly your best, most capable developers become your most profitable ones because they're done fast and they do good work. And then they can, whatever, go on vacation or go to the next project or whatever they want to do. But instantly it aligns the financial incentives of getting better at what you do, and making more money for it, instead of getting uh, financially incentivized to be slower or not get better or not build tools or not have reusable components or whatever the thing is. So like, hourly billing just punishes expertise. The better you get, the less you make. It's brutal.
And is that how you position that to clients that may do? I'm sure clients come to you and say, "How do you bill? Do you bill hourly?" And from there, you take the conversation of, how do you answer a question like that? Like, how do you bill?
They always say this. The question is almost always, "What's your hourly rate?" And I say, "I don't have one." And they go, "Well, how do you price your work?" And I say, "I'll give you a price for the project. Is that acceptable?" And
Mm,
they're almost always like, "Yeah, that'd be amazing," because
mm,
clients hate hourly billing because they don't know how much they're going to end up paying. They hate it.
yeah,
Anybody that's got experience, especially in software, but other big projects, it could be a home renovation. It doesn't matter. Anything that the client is given an estimate up front and then forced to treat it like a price because they have to make a buying decision, and then find out later that it's going to be 25% more, 50% more, 100% more sometimes. Nobody likes that.
right.
And it's a horrible feeling. So, unless they're just looking for a pair of hands to flip burgers or something, if you're talented at what you do, and obviously if you're listening to this, you're in some sort of professional service business, nobody wants your hours. Nobody wants your time. They want the transformation that they believe you can bring to their business. They want it to be improved somehow. And that's what and there's an amount of money that they'd be happy to pay for that improvement or your contribution to that improvement. They don't care about, and the faster you can do it, the better. If you could wave a magic wand and get them that new, whatever streamlined database or workflow or new iOS app or increase traffic to their website, if you could snap your fingers and make that happen in a second, they'd be even happier. Like, why would they want to wait? Nobody wants to wait.
Yeah, and I mean, in our industry, it's very much like website design, ongoing SEO, ongoing ads for
Hmm.
local service-based businesses.
Hmm.
The issue with SEO, and I'm sure that you've heard of this, is companies will often feel like you're not doing anything for them on a monthly basis. But the way that you're positioning it is more about, hey, it's not really about that. It's more about the end result. You're here for these
Hmm.
keywords. You're not here for these keywords.
Right.
The amount of time isn't necessarily what's important. It's the expertise that's on your account. My question to you then is, a lot of these like large firms like Boston Consulting Group, McKinsey, a lot of these large consulting firms, they have like an hourly, insanely high hourly rate. How do you think those companies position the pricing for the clients that they take?
Well, McKinsey actually switched off of hourly. I don't know how long ago it was, but they don't do that anymore. As far I don't know if they exclusively do actual pricing, because hourly billing is not pricing. It's making an estimate and billing. It's not pricing.
Got
So
it.
McKinsey switched off of it. But of course, your point is well taken. Somebody like Deloitte, their whole business model is to send an army of consultants in to sit in a meeting and run the clock. I mean, that's I have experience. I have friends who work Deloitte. It's not a bad company. That's the way that model works. But
Sure.
if you're a solo operator or a small firm and you don't want to scale by adding an army of junior developers or junior whatever it is that you do, then you have to find another way to scale. If you want to scale, if you want to make more money in less time, you need to figure out a way to create leverage. Adding bodies is one way to do it, and that is one way to scale up an hourly model. But not everybody wants to be a boss or would even make a good boss. So if you really enjoy your craft and you enjoy working directly with the clients that you want to work with, then you have to find a different way. And that almost always is going to mean switching off of trading time for money to some other model. It could be value pricing, it could be productized services, it could be product, it could be subscription. There are a bunch of different ways you could do it. But in your example, the for someone who does like ongoing SEO for like a locksmith or a dry cleaner or something like that, they don't want SEO. They want the phone ringing. They want people walking in the door. So if you can contribute to that transformation, then there's an amount of money that they would happily pay for it. So if you frame the whole conversation around not around SEO and we're going to do this and that and the other, and we're going to set up your campaigns and ads and blah blah blah, they don't care. What they really care about is the phone ringing and people coming in the door and making more money. So if you think you can contribute to that, you can set a price for that contribution. If you're going to hem and haw and say, well, the algorithm is changing all the time, I don't know what I can do, then I don't, why would I hire you if you don't even, if you're an expert, supposedly, but don't believe you can contribute somewhat and we're just completely rolling the dice, then why would I hire you? I mean, so presumably people who do SEO are confident enough in their um, procedures or their process or whatever that they know that they can move the needle for certain kinds of clients, like maybe a client who just has awful, or just is in an awful situation. Maybe they don't even have a website. There's just nowhere to go but up. But yeah, so it's the outcome they want. They want the phone ringing.
I got it. So when you start that sales process, you're really starting with the outcome that the client is looking for, and then
Yep.
are you building out a strategy after seeking the outcome, or what's your sales process like if you were a website designer or an SEO agency?
Right. So let's say it happened sort of old school way. Someone refers you, hey, Alice is great at web design and you need a web designer, so you should talk to Alice. So they email Alice and they say, hey, we heard you're great at web design. We need some web design. What's your hourly rate? If it were me, I would say, well, I don't have an hourly rate, like I said before, but if you'd be willing to accept a fixed price for the project, then we can talk. And the usually will say, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds amazing. Let's talk. So I jump on a phone call with them and they'll brain dump for like, 15, 20 minutes of everything that they can think of about the project. And once they've kind of exhausted all of the excitement and all of those, like all of the data that they think they have,
Yeah.
I'll be taking notes like crazy. And then I'll say, this is great. I've got all these notes. Can we back up for a second so I can get the bigger picture context of the business, because there are dozens of ways that we could tackle this. I want to make sure I don't pick one that's not aligned with your business strategy. And they'll say, yeah, sure. A good client will say, yeah, sure. And they'll get excited about the next step. Bad clients, ones that don't really want to partner with you, or they're really just looking for the cheapest, they won't love that question. And that's good, because then you can just filter them out. But if they get excited about it and they say, yeah, let's talk about that, then I would go into what I call the why conversation, where you ask 3 types of why questions: why this, why now, and why me. And you can sort of circle through the questions and just have a conversation with them, where essentially it feels kind of like you're trying to talk them out of working with you or doing the project. So, it might be something like, well, why do you even want SEO? Isn't there a different way that you could do this? Why not put flyers under people's windshield wipers? What are some other ways that you've tried to solve this problem?
Hmm.
And they'll say, well, we tried this, we tried that, we tried the other. We hired my cousin Vinny. We hired someone who was in a different time zone. There are all these other things we tried, and none of them worked. We've been wasting a lot of time on this. There's opportunity cost and the money that they put into those different, there's all sorts of lost resources. And so you start to think in your mind, or my mind, when I'm having a conversation like this, they're convincing me to work with them. And while they're doing that, they're convincing themselves that they should hire me. If there's an actual good fit. I'm not trying to persuade them. I'm trying to
Right.
uncover whether or not there is a good fit.
Yeah.
And if it turns out that this is the kind of client who I agree really does need to do this thing, whatever it is, build a new website. They really need to do it right now. Like, there's a lot of urgency because maybe a competitor is eating their lunch, or Amazon's moving into their space, or, they have some new huge opportunity that they need to capture immediately. And they're willing to hire someone expensive like me because they've tried cheaper options and they didn't work. And it was just a total waste of time and money. Then I'm like, okay, I'm taking notes of exactly what they said. Like, why can't you hire someone cheaper? And they'll tell me, how come you have to do it right now? And they told me. And why do you need to do this? They explained why it needs to be this. So at that point, I'll be confident that yes, this is a good fit. There's probably a lot of value here. And I'll say, okay, if there was what would a home run look like? If we just completely knock this out of the park and your dreams come true, what would that look like? And clients will sit back like, oh, it would be amazing if, and they'll sort of blurt something out. And it depends on the nature of the work or what the project is. But if they'll say something like, oh, if we doubled our conversion rate, or if we doubled the number of leads that we got, or if we, I don't know, if it's some sort of thought leadership thing you're doing for them, if the CEO landed a TED talk or was in Forbes or the Wall Street Journal, they'll give you some metric that would be like a home run. And so now, once you have that, and a little bit of information about the business, like, is this $1 million business, a $10 million business, a $100 million business? Are you talking to the CEO, or are you talking to a director? So you'll have a rough idea, if you do a tiny bit of homework, what kind of money that they're working with, what their buying power is. And you can use that to kind of guesstimate at what the value of this project would be if they hit the home run that you're talking about, like that they would like to see. So you say, okay, so you'd like to double the number of leads that come through the door, or you'd like to, right now they have no website. They're not doing any online sales, and they want to increase their revenue by 20%. They've got retail stores and they want the website to be 20% increase of revenue.
Yeah.
All right, great. So you can say, well, this, for a company like this, it must be at least in the 20% would be at least $1 million in revenue. So you can reverse engineer from there and say, all right, let's say I give myself a budget of $100,000, because they're going to make $1 million for sure. Like, if we do this, it's like almost guaranteed they're going to make $1 million. Not because I think so, but because that's what they said in the meeting. They're sure that they'll have a 20% increase in revenue if they could just get this e-commerce site up. They might be wrong, but that's what they think.
No, that makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I would say, all right, for 10% of $1 million, I've got $100,000 budget. What could I do for this particular client for $100,000? And I think about the scope last. We don't talk about it in the meeting. If it comes up, I try and deflect. I'll say, like, well, I know what the end goal is now, and there might be some different ways to skin this cat. So let's not get too bought in on a particular solution. So I
Right.
keep the scope real mushy in the meeting because I really want to know what the outcome is to see if there's any value there at all to justify me writing a proposal. So if I say, yeah, okay, these people need this big web presence thing, and if I had a budget of $100,000, what would I do? And then I come up with a scope that I would happily do for $100,000, and that would be option one in the proposal. And then I would do the same thing for options two and three, which would be bigger and much bigger. So maybe 20, 220,000 and 500,000. So if these numbers sound enormous, then just chop off a zero. It's the same concept.
No, that totally makes sense. So you're actually going in there with what you need to do to accomplish their goals as your first option, and then you have bigger options after that to over accomplish what their goal is.
Not exactly. So it's more like how much I will contribute to that outcome.
Okay.
So the outcome will be the same for all three. It's just a question of how much I would contribute to that. So the first option might be something like a DIY option where I just teach them how to do the thing, put them in touch with someone that can do it for them, and just say, "Here you go." It doesn't make sense in the probably wouldn't make sense for like a big web app build or something like that. But there are plenty of types of businesses, consultants like us or freelancers that option one could be, I'll show you how to do it, or I'll do a no code solution where I just plug FreshBooks into Google Sheets into Zapier and FreshBooks, and here's a no code solution that will make your spreadsheet nightmare a little bit less nightmarish. So the first option sometimes is a DIY option. The middle option sometimes is like a done with you,
Right.
where you kind of coach them through it, but they do the labor, they do the implementation piece. And then the top one would be sort of a concierge. We do absolutely everything we can and minimize the time requirements on your employees. So, but there's different is that's not it's not always the same. Sometimes the option one might be a blueprint, and option two might be um, an oversight of the implementation. And option what did I say? Two, one, two, and then three
Great.
might be doing the whole implementation. So it depends on the kind of work that you do. But if it was SEO, it's like option one could be I'll show you how to use the Google tools to improve your SEO, and I'll show you how to set up Google My Business, and I'll show you how to run ads, but not actually doing it for them.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so, have you always offered three options? And is there a reason for that?
Always. Yeah, always.
Okay,
Always.
I hear that all the time. I'm curious to hear your reasoning behind it.
Yeah, so the idea of offering three options is to give them a choice so that they don't have to take if you just give them one price, then people are terrible at assessing whether or not it's reasonable. So they'll be almost forced to get other quotes to compare the price to. So it's
Yes,
like an ultimatum. It's like take it or leave it. It'll be this much money. So I'm talking about a project here. This is like a
sure,
non-trivial, like 3 to 6 month engagement
sure.
or ongoing
Yeah,
month to month. If you give them three options, then they're thinking, okay, which would be the best option? How can we best work with Jonathan or whoever?
sure.
And they start to look at the delta between options one and two and say, okay, what's the difference between, Jesus, like option two is like $12,000 more than option one. Like, what do we get for that difference? And they would really be thinking about it. They'd probably ask, they might show it to other people. They might, show it to their board or to a colleague and say, like, which one of these makes the most sense? Which one do you think? And if the other thing about having three options is that you can drive the buyer to one option or another. I usually use two different kinds of pricing curves. Um, my favorite one is sort of a swing for the fences one I call Goldilocks pricing, where option one is like, let's say it's 10,000, option two is 2.2x, so 22,000. And then option three would be like 5x, so 50,000. So big jumps between each tier. And what that does is it's like, geez, that third tier, it's nice, but that's a lot of money. That 50 grand, we were not planning on spending that. And then it's like, well, but that 22 seems pretty affordable compared to 50. So if all three options will get them closer to their desired outcome, just with different types of interaction or attention from you, then they'll start thinking like, oh yeah, maybe that, psychologically, the science will drive them to option two in a scenario like that. As long as your prices are in the ballpark and you weren't way off with your estimate of what the value was. The other curve I use is I call might as well pricing.
Hmm.
And the best example of this is like on Apple's website where you add a thing and add a thing and add a thing. And like, well, if I'm gonna, I'm already up to like, I might as well buy the next laptop up, because the price is getting so close. I might as well buy the next one up. So that would be more like, if option one was $10,000, option two would be like 15,000, option three would be like 17,
Right.
17.5. And then
Yeah.
it's like, well, if we're gonna spend 15, we might as well get the top option and just spend 2,500 more. So that's the kind of curve that you would use if you really, really wanted the client, you really needed either you really wanted to work with the client or you really need the money and you're afraid that you might not be in the ballpark pricing wise. That curve will drive them to option three, and it'll leave the least amount of money on the table. So you can kind of lowball it, but at least not leave too much money on the table, or at least not, you could leave less money on the table by driving them to option three.
Yeah, that's critical. I mean, it's really good because the might as well pricing, it definitely works. If you're going to spend 17,000, you might as well spend 25 or 20,000.
Right. Yeah.
Totally makes sense. And I love how you talk about the value of the project. It really doesn't. The problem that the customer has when they come to you is really
Hmm.
guesstimate the value based on some of those questions you mentioned.
Hmm.
For like a local service-based business, right? Because
Yep.
most of my audience, they have roofing companies, plumbing companies, locksmiths, like you said,
Yep.
coming to them. And if they're already doing good in marketing, how would you guesstimate the value of one of your engagements for that type of client?
You'd have to ask. It's the why conversation. You have to ask them. It's like, well, you could say like, geez, it seems like your marketing's on point. Like, why would you hire someone expensive like me?
Mm,
And they have to tell you, they have to convince you that it makes sense for them to pay you a bunch of money.
mhm.
And then, like you can't you could guess at it, but you don't need to. You can just ask them. Yeah. So they might have some new, I don't know, maybe they're planning to expand into a new region, and they need help in that region, like they're doing fine here, but not there. You just be curious. You go into the interview and you interview them. It's
Yeah,
not a pitch. It's
right.
never a pitch.
Yeah.
Just go and find out about their business and, first do no harm. If they don't need you or you don't believe you can contribute to their outcome, or they don't know what their outcome is, you're talking to a gatekeeper and they don't know what the outcome is, then you shouldn't take their money, because taking their money is going to have a negative impact on their business unless you deliver positive ROI. So if you want to deliver customer satisfaction, you better find out first how to satisfy them. And then
Mm.
you decide, am I confident that I can satisfy this customer? And if I'm not, or if you're not, just walk away.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's awesome. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest pieces that I've taken. I've done Developmark for about 4 years now, and we've grown. We're doing 1 million a year now. But in the beginning, I was taking clients that are like, I don't think I was going to have the biggest impact for. But we really started to see a change when we started knowing before during the conversation that there was going to be an impact for them.
Right.
So the question I have for you is, if you quit all of the amazing consulting and kind of the course information and a lot of the education that you're doing now and started like an SEO agency, what would your offer look like? How would you enter an engagement like that with a client?
I wouldn't even call myself SEO. I mean, what does SEO produce?
Right.
It's just a tool.
Yeah.
Like it's like me presenting myself to the world as a JavaScript developer. Who cares? What can that do for me is what I want to know. So if I was going to do that, well, you tell me, what does SEO produce? What is the business outcome that it delivers?
Certainly new sales opportunities.
Okay.
That's one of them.
Like,
I think that's the most popular one.
all right, so that's what I would present myself as. It's like, hey, I help locksmiths get new sales opportunities. That sounds kind of weird, but who wants what kind of company wants more sales opportunities?
I mean, I do. I would
Okay,
love
so
sales
and
opportunity.
what kind of company would you call yourself? Like, how do you categorize yourself?
I would probably say agency would make sense.
Okay, so
Uh,
I help agencies double their sales opportunities. Oh my
right.
God, you do? Yeah,
Like
how do you do
how?
that? Oh,
Right.
SEO, ad, PPC, the things you do, but that doesn't matter.
Right.
If I have these different products and services that will increase your increase sales opportunities for agencies. And then I'd say, okay, agencies, where do agencies hang out? They hang out in Slack rooms. They hang out maybe at a conference. They hang out maybe in a LinkedIn group. And so I would go in there. I'd go to those places where they hang out, and I'd look for emotionally charged language, frustration, fear, worry about agencies that are struggling to increase their sales opportunities. And I would just be super helpful and share my expertise in those places. I wouldn't bother calling myself an SEO person.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, because you're right. That's just a tool that how
Hmm.
you get to the new sales opportunities, which is
Right.
mainly why people come to us. And so like therefore, like how would you for most of these local sized businesses, how much would you charge for a website? I know it depends, but on a
Yeah.
general basis, what have you seen people charging for websites on average?
That question doesn't even make sense to me. It's like you can't, like, if you go to a mom and pop pizza place who's already really busy, but they don't have online ordering on their website or something, how much would it be worth to them to build an online ordering feature on their website? Zero. Because if they had it, then and it would be hard. It would be worth nothing to them because they're already maxed out. They don't have another location. There's just no benefit to them that would be meaningful. So it's worth zero. So I can charge them zero. Even if it would take me 100 hours or 200 hours and I feel like a fair hourly rate is $100 an hour, I could never do it. It depends on the situation. If Domino's Pizza comes to me and says, "Hey, we need to enable mobile ordering," which is the kind of thing I used to do before I did this, like back in the day, um, that would be worth millions, right? So it just totally it doesn't make sense. The question doesn't make sense to me. I understand why you're asking it, but the idea of saying a website is worth this much is doesn't it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because somebody who has the problem but doesn't care for the problem or doesn't see the value in it, they're not going
Yeah,
to pay what you're asking for.
right. Like, how much is a 1976 Mustang convertible worth?
Uh,
Like, you can look up a number, but
right,
that doesn't mean you wanna spend it. It
right,
doesn't mean you want it.
right.
So in a macroeconomic sense, there might be a way to do an average and say websites cost about this much, but that's meaningless information at the microeconomic level when you're sitting across from a buyer and they're like, "How much is a website gonna be?" And it's like, it could be anywhere from 5,000 to 5,000,000. You gotta tell me about the project. Like, what do you need it to do for you? And then I can tell you what I can do. So there's just not a I mean, I understand your question,
Yeah.
but
No,
it doesn't exist.
yeah, no, it makes total sense.
Mhm,
And in terms of like your dream metrics,
mhm.
is that like something that you follow up with clients on, or you would recommend to just keep that's the focus? So if
Oh,
I
yeah,
can't,
that's how you control scope. Mhm.
right? Okay, so how do you handle like scope creep and stuff like that, where you're trying to control that scope?
Yep, right. Because if you give a fixed price and no change you can't issue change orders, like, that's not no. It's like if you said it's gonna be $10,000, that's how much they're gonna pay, not a dime more. So you need to have really clear success criteria so you know when you're done. Otherwise, it'll go on forever.
Mm,
So you uncover that success metric at the beginning, and maybe it's increased sales opportunities. Let's go way upstream. So let's say the thing that the client wants is to increase revenue by 20%, and you're like a branding person. So you're way upstream from sales, and you're going to maybe do a you're going to do a rebrand for some outdoor lifestyle brand that is that's small, sort of mom and pop, but they're looking to start competing against big names like Patagonia or whatever.
mhm.
And you come and their site is they're all their marketing, the brand, it's garbage. They know it's garbage. It looks amateurish, and they know they're not going to be able to compete. So you say, okay, I'll come in, and you have the conversation. You come in, and you say, well, why do you think you need a brand expert like me? Why is that connected to this downstream increase in revenue? How do you think those two things are going to relate? Like, you don't want to be the one explaining why having a more professional looking brand would maybe turn into 20% revenue increase down the road. You want them to explain it to you. That's the why conversation.
That's so
So,
powerful. Yeah, that's
right.
extremely powerful.
So if it's connected in their mind that they just like, we're embarrassed to send people to our site. We know it looks like garbage. People laugh at it. If they know and they know they're never going to get that 20%, they're never going to get where they want to go unless they get an expert branding person to come in and do this. And then it's connected in their mind. So you would say in the proposal, you would say, okay, the outcome of my piece will be X, Y, and Z. So it might be something like it usually has deliverables in it, but you'd also articulate the benefits of each deliverable. So, if we're doing a branding thing, it'd be something like, option one would be something like, we'll do a brand innovation workshop with all of the principals I'll find out what your brand is. I'll articulate it with colors and imagery and language. And at the end of that, this option one thing, you'll know what your brand is. You'll know what it looks like, and you'll be able to communicate that clearly to anybody downstream. So marketing, execution, sales, any of that, web development. Maybe you don't do any of that stuff. So what they would get out of that, for, let's say it's 10,000, 50,000, doesn't matter. Let's say it's $10,000 for this brand innovation workshop, or whatever you call it, brand blueprint, lightning brand, call it something. It's $10,000, let's say, and the outcome is clarity around what the brand is and a vehicle to communicate that to all the people that need to know. That on its own that will be your sort of, this is it, I'm done, here you go. Are you now clear about your brand? They're going to be like, yes, that was amazing. This is going to be a game changer. So they connected the dots between having a new overall brand released or published into the world with their desired outcomes. And they picked the option where you deliver clarity around the brand and this vehicle to communicate it to other people. And that's how you know you're done, when they are clear. And
Right.
then they'll know too. So everyone's like, okay, we're done.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And if you had like a portfolio of clients that were, because right now, like when you're talking about these sales opportunities that you're getting into, those are some good clients. You know what I mean? They're good clients. They have a problem. They know they have a problem. They're okay
Mhm.
with some of the numbers that you would request. It has that
Right.
much of an impact to their business. What would be your recommendation for an agency that may have a lot of clients, but a lot of low paying clients? And so they're kind of spread thin,
Yeah.
and making that transition into having fewer clients, but a lot more higher paying clients.
I mean, you're not going to like the answer, but it's get rid of the ones that are not doing anything for you,
Hmm.
and start at the bottom and start handing them off in a nice, polite way, but in a firm way. You're going to hand them off to other people and be like, well, it seems like we've delivered everything we can here. Or whatever, or you're getting increasingly dissatisfied, the client's getting increasingly dissatisfied with the work, or we're taking the agency in a different direction, and it would be a better fit for you to work with someone else that we can hand you off to, and just get rid of them.
Hmm.
Then that will give you more time to work on the business to attract the kinds of clients that you love, the ones that have you working in your genius zone all the time, the
Yep.
ones that you can hit bigger home runs for.
Yep.
And even I've seen, it depends on how many clients you have and how big the agency is, but I've seen it over and over again where just letting go your worst client, like who your worst client is. And it's not that they're bad, it's just
Right.
not a good fit.
Not a good fit.
They're
Yeah.
not bad people, it's just not a good fit. You
Right.
know who they are. And it might be painful because they might be your oldest client also. But you've gone through this transformation, the agency's gotten better, and they're just not in your sweet spot anymore. So do the right thing for you and for them, and put them in touch with someone who is in the sweet spot. And that frees up so much time and energy. It's shocking, just getting rid of like that one that one client that's been holding you back. It's scary and it's no fun. Breakups are no fun, but but what's the alternative is you will never stop working with them. Like that doesn't, until they fire you, maybe, because it gets so bad. That's just passive aggressive. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. It seems like it's better to be proactive about it and than save the hardship.
yeah, a lot of people, I think Blair Enns says like every year you should fire the bottom 20% of your clients.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think fire is a really bad like word. I think you're like separating. I think is better. Like firing, it just sounds a little crazy, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, people use the word fire to like shock the listener because it's so dramatic that
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
what? I mean, they can fire you.
yeah. Always, yeah, and you don't want that. I mean, that's
No,
that's not good.
but you're
Um,
right. You're right. I would be very humane about it for
yeah,
sure.
right, right. So like knowing who to pass it off to and being consistent and knowing that they're in their price range, because
Hmm.
ideally you would want to maybe talk to that client and say, hey, we want to do this for you, and this is how much it costs, and if not, we have to pass you off because this is just how we do things now.
Yeah, a lot of people will do that. They'll say, "Oh, we're making some changes to the business, and our prices are just going to go. I know our prices are going to be way outside of your budget, so we've got someone we can hand you off to." And if really what you're just trying to do is raise prices on all your clients, this is an approach. If you don't actually want to let them go, but you just want them to be paying more,
Sure.
You could do that and say, look, we're switching to a fixed price model, but to cover our risk, the prices are going to be like dramatically higher. And we've been working with you long enough to know that'll be outside of your budget. So we can introduce you to some people that, would be a better fit for you. And they'll say, well, how much more? Like how much more? Yeah, a lot more. It's going to be a lot. I'd be embarrassed to tell you it's going to be so much more, but we're bringing in new clients at these higher prices. And they're like, seriously, no, we don't want to switch. How much more? And you're like, well, it's going to be double. And they're like, well, let me talk to my partner and see.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So that's amazing. I have another question for you.
Sure.
So when it comes to like these existing clients and knowing what you can do for them, based on some of that value-based pricing that you were talking about before, like I know a roofing company makes $20,000 every roof they sell. If
Mhm.
it's through me as a source, I can kind of gauge how big of an impact that it's going to have. What do you do in situations where they like the plan, but they want a more customized plan? They like your three options, but they want something just completely different.
Sometimes, so that could be a red flag because if you're like an SEO person and they do roofs, like why would they know what to do? Like they're good at what they do, you're good at what you do. And if it's like a, you know, backseat driving kind of scenario where they're like, no, we want you to execute it like this, then that's not a good client.
Hmm.
They just want a pair of hands to do what they're told, and they'll probably find that will not work out very well for them. If
Got
they're
it.
driving, you know what I mean? If they're driving, it's like flying to a city you've never been to and getting in the cab and telling the driver which way to go. It doesn't make sense, but
That, yeah,
clients do it all the time, but
yeah,
those are not the kind of clients you want to work with. So
yeah.
if they wanted something completely different, like they said, well, no, we heard from someone or I read some articles and I know enough to be dangerous. I know we should be doing this or that or the other. And it's like, well, if you're so smart, see, you would have uncovered this in the sales meeting,
Sure,
but
sure. Yeah,
if they're so smart and they know how to do it, then why pay me? Like there's no reason to pay me.
got it.
So yeah, so it's probably a red flag, because if you focus the proposal, the proposal is going to be so much more focused on the outcome and the benefits that it would be. There's not that much plan in it. It's kind of like we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do the other. These are the three deliverables, and here are the benefits of this option. It's real short. Like my proposal format, even for $1 million project, be like 5 pages long. So it's real short. It's focused on the transformation and then the benefits of each option. And there's a little bit of deliverable stuff in there. And if they got real micromanagey about the proposal, then what do you think they're going to be like on the project?
Right,
Yeah.
right. For a business like mine,
Hmm.
we did 1.1 million last year, which was amazing. Very
Hmm.
grateful, very happy about that.
Cool.
I think some of the stuff that you're telling me, and I think some of the stuff that you're telling me is what's going to get me to 10 million. Specifically, the types of projects that we take, the pricing model, and more so just delivering what you like you mentioned, what they're looking to get out of this, right?
Hmm.
That's like the key to the agency. If you looked at my price, if you looked at my books, right, and you saw all the clients that we have, and some of them were higher, some of them were lower. Your approach, you're getting good leads, right? Like you're talking to people that genuinely you can provide some value to.
Hmm.
What would you say for an agency 0 to 1 million, let's say in size? Right now we're at 17 employees. Um, what would they do to attract some of those better types of clients?
Well, the best thing to do first is decide what they are. So
Hmm.
I get this when people join my mailing list. One of the first emails that they get is, "What would success look like for your business?" And like 90% of them is like, more better clients. Some variation of more better clients. Clients that respect me or value what I do, don't push back on price, don't micromanage, are a dream to work with. But they never describe what kind of client. So I usually will email back and say that sounds great. What kind of clients are you looking to work with? And they're like, oh, I never thought about that. And it's like, well, it's kind of hard to catch fish without the right bait,
Yeah,
or maybe not even different types of fish. It's like, I'm going to go catch an animal. Well, what kind,
right.
you know? And it's like, not to use a hunting metaphor, but because it's not the same thing, but
That was pretty
um,
good though. That was pretty good.
yeah, I mean, I think it was in Dale Carnegie's book, a million years ago. It's like, I like strawberry shortcake, but when I go fishing, I put worms on the hook.
Right,
Not what I like. I
right.
put what the worms like. So you don't know whether it should be a worm or chicken feed, or you don't know how to attract the people you want to work with if you don't know who you want to work with. So one of the first things I would do with a coaching student is come up with a positioning statement, which would include the target market. And some people have no problem with this. They know exactly who they want to work with. Other people have a horrible problem with this because I can help everybody. But that just doesn't. So I would say focusing on some kind of ideal buyer. It could be. It doesn't have to be a vertical like locksmiths or dentists. It could be people who are right wing or left wing, or it could be people who are environmentally conscious. I want to work with skiers. Like I want to work with CEOs who go skiing every year. Why? Because I like skiing and I go skiing with my CEO clients. So you could pick a demographic like, pregnant women between 25 and 35. There's all these different ways you can look back. Maybe if you've got experience, who were the best people to work with, and then pick those, actually pick like, okay, our objective for the year is to get from 1 million to 10 million or from 0 to a million. Pick someone because as soon as you pick someone, then word of mouth can start happening. Your friends and family and colleagues and past employers and everybody can start saying, "Oh, I know a cab driver, or I know a CEO that goes skiing all the time, or I know someone who's pregnant and is 27 years old." So right away your referrals can start really picking up, and referrals are, a good way to get new clients. So yeah, so picking what a good client is and then getting referrals for them. And then the thing I would do after that, if you want me to keep going, is find out where they hang out and go there and be helpful. And then just inspire conversations around the kind of transformations that you can provide, not about your tools or what you do, but about the transformations they're looking to achieve with their business. And if you can go do that and help them for free, they're going to get really interested in who you are and what you do, and they're going to initiate their own sales conversation.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I like what you said about getting deeper than just a vertical, instead getting deeper into the actual personal demographics of that person. Because develop our company, just as using as an example, there's no vertical. We work with several types of businesses, but there's definitely that we have employees. We watch and read self-help. Those are like always really good clients for us because they kind of know what we're talking about. I want to grow my business. I'm aggressive. I want to scale. I
Mhm.
want to sell one day. So I definitely know what you mean. I really like that approach because most people that teach agency growth will tell you stick to one business vertical, which is definitely a strategy, but it's not the only strategy.
Right.
So tell me about like where do you go to get information? Like what are you reading on a daily basis?
What am I reading on a daily basis? I always have a bunch of books going that I'm reading a bunch of different books. I stay away from news and social media. I goof around on Twitter a little bit, but I don't have Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or any of those things on my phone. I don't pay attention to any of that stuff. Um, so I'll dip into whatever book I feel like in the moment. It'll be like, it could be fiction, it could be nonfiction. Trying to think of some of the last ones. I'm in the middle of a book called Range, which is kind of interesting. What else? It's hard to see. I can't even. I'd have to pull up my phone. But mostly, I would dig into a book. Um, I'm on Seth Godin's mailing list. I read that every day, but I don't read too many. There's not too many daily mailing lists that I read. I think that's the only one. So mostly books, and I listen to podcasts. So either sort of entertainment or more business related types of things. That's where I get most of my stuff. So like mostly stuff that's not ad supported or click supported.
Yeah, general just information. And
Hmm.
where did you learn a lot of the stuff that you're teaching now and you've done? Where did
Yeah.
you learn?
Um, I started out with a book by Alan Weiss called Value Based Fees, which is really for management consultants, and it was written in the 80s. It's probably been updated by now, but that was my Bible for like 3 years. I did have to adapt a bunch of things to a software development model because it wasn't, not everything mapped quite the same. Because he wasn't really an implementation person, and I had still some implementation stuff. So I basically bought that book. I left the agency where I was the VP because I didn't know how to take them from hourly to anything else. I was too nervous to do it. And the owner was like, "I'm not sure how to do that." I was like, "Me neither. Maybe we shouldn't, but I'll leave. I'll go prove the model on my own." That was 2006, and so it's sort of like combination of that one book and the fact that I had some clients that I brought with me. We worked out a deal, so I brought some clients with me and got some new clients, and yeah, it just worked right away. So then I had tons of practice doing it. So then, what was that, 2006? So, and then yeah, so for at least 10 years, I was practicing it. And then reading more Ron Baker, who else? Blair Enns. There's a whole bunch of people that it's not hard to find stuff on this topic. It's not new.
Right.
So I just read a ton and would put it into practice. And then people started asking me to help them switch from hourly to this, like my friends from back in the day. So I had a few like coaching students that I wasn't doing coaching. It was just a side thing that they were like, "Hey, could you help me?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I can't do it for free." So I just started getting into coaching, and then, fast forward to now, and that's like my whole business.
Yeah, and so that I was going to ask that's what you're doing really full time now is
Mhm.
consulting businesses, individuals on specifically that model of changing their pricing, or is there more technical things you're working on too?
Well, it's the same. You would not be surprised to hear that when I work with a student one-on-one, that it starts off by saying, "Okay, what's your objective? What's your desired outcome from this 4-month engagement?"
Mhm.
And they'll have a thing. They'll know,
Right.
and I'll say, "Okay," and I'll get we have this meeting where I get to know their superpowers and their kryptonite, and I say, "Okay, given those two things, and where you're currently at and where you want to go, we'll come up with a strategy that will get them closer to that goal." And so that can look like a lot of different things, uh, but it usually starts with some kind of positioning statement that we're going to stick with for that period of time. Just 4 months is about enough time to see if you're going to get traction, start to get real traction. And then we figure out, okay, where are the buyers? Who are the ideal buyers? Where do they hang out? How do we get on their radar? It could be anything from outreach on LinkedIn or hanging out in a subreddit or cold calls to executives. Like, it's hard to say. It could be conferences. So there's a bunch of different tactics, but my overall business philosophy is help people like get what they want. So it's to my students, I'm like, who do you like? And then once you know that, then it's like, what do they want? And figure out how you can connect those dots.
Hmm. Got it. Yeah, no, that's extremely interesting. And so you're doing more consulting on the sales and strategy and customer acquisition and pricing, not necessarily the development or getting the work done.
Correct. But I am often called in by students to, once they sell one of these projects, then they immediately feel the pressures like, whoa, this is all the money we're getting. This is it. So we need to really control the scope creep. And a lot of times they need help with that. So I can kind of coach them through difficult conversations around scope.
Understood. What's the best project you've ever taken on, and what made it the best?
That is interesting. I would say a couple of things come to mind, but they're from different eras. So from my current business, I just love it when like a student completely hits a home run, and I've got a couple of star students that just crush it. Um, there's one story that is easy to tell, so I guess I'll focus on that one, where he had a proposal to write, and he was planning to send it out for like, let's say 25,000. I was like, that is way too low. This should be at least 65,000, and they bought it. And he was like in 1 second, he basically got a down payment for a new house. So, just that one, I was like, well, that paid for itself, didn't it? Like, my coaching might sound expensive, but it can pay for itself pretty
What were they
quickly.
selling? What were they selling?
It was like DevOps kind of
Okay,
back end, keep your servers from going down on Black Friday type stuff.
got it. That would cost
Yeah,
a lot more than 65,000 if it went down.
precisely.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
You
Yeah. And
you
then,
oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
there's other projects from back when I did software, but that was a long time ago.
Got it. And what's the worst project you've ever done?
I did one that so when I first went solo, there was a project that I just underestimated the complexity. So I'm sure a lot of people listening to this conversation are just like, well, I'm too terrified to give a fixed price. I have to do hourly because that covers my risk. And it's like, yeah, it puts all the risk on the client, which means if you don't take any risk, you don't get much reward. So you need to take some risk in order to get the reward. And there was one project that I thought was going to take about a year. It's been so long. I'm pretty sure I thought it was going to take about a year, not full time, but a year. And I was like, and I said to the guy, we were kind of going back and forth about a price, and I'm like, I don't know. I think this is going to take about a year. I'm not sure what the price. I don't know what the right price is. And I just blurted out like, but I could do anything for 200 grand. And he was like, really? And I said, yeah. And he goes, done. And I was like, all right, 200 grand. So, and I thought it was going to take me a year of part-time work. It ended up taking 2 years of part-time work. So my effective hourly rate was half of what it could have been, but it was still so high, I didn't care.
Right.
And the other thing is if I had been billing by the hour for a project and I said, I think it's going to be about 200 grand. And then we got to the end of year one and it was obviously only halfway done. The client would have been very upset. They would have become micromanagey. They would have been going over every hour's timesheet with a fine tooth comb. We would have been fighting about hours, but none of that happened because they were like, well, just keep working. And I was like, cool, and so I just kept working. So my effective hourly rate went way down, but the thing that people don't appreciate with fixed pricing, whether it's value-based or some other kind, is that the clients chill way out. Because there's almost never a really hard deadline. Sometimes there is, but there's almost never a hard deadline. Usually the reason they have deadlines is because they associate missing a deadline with it costing more.
Right.
So if they're not worried about it costing more, then everybody's chill. They know you're doing your best. They know that there were tons of surprises and it's not going to cost them anymore to get it done. So from a client standpoint, it's dreamy. And even from the developer standpoint or the seller standpoint, that's only happened to me once in 10 years of doing development. So, it really wasn't that big a deal. Plus I really liked the client. So it was fine.
Yeah. So do you think the employment model is going to change to that route? I mean, companies that have employees, it's really like, hey, it's not really about the biweekly check anymore. It's more about, if you don't need that much time to accomplish what you're supposed to be doing here,
Mhm.
you're not required for that. And what do you think that's going to be like?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I don't have a clear answer yet, but I'm gathering information because it does feel to me like something's changing there. I'm getting lot more questions than before, years before, a lot more questions about how to make value pricing work with employees. And it's kind of like, on the one hand, it's some people are like, I feel like I'm taking advantage of my employees because I'm making so much money on the project and they're not really participating in that.
Mhm.
On the one hand, like some people, once they take the red pill and they're like, wow, hourly billing is nuts, then they don't like paying their contractors hourly, even if they're not employees, because it's bad for the contractor. And plus they're also sensitive to like contractors if they're going way over their estimates at costing more, just like I said. So I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I imagine that the combination of factors like remote work, the really, really high employment, it's like impossible to hire people now. So I
Yeah.
imagine that and just gig economy and digital nomads and I think all of these trends could coalesce around a model where fewer freelancers said, I'm $100 an hour, and said, tell me what you're trying to achieve, and I'll tell you how much it's going to cost to have me do it. And 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 even if it's an employee model, you say something like, um, hey, let's say, all right, so like Bob's your employee, and you say, hey Bob, I got a new feature I think you could work on. Or maybe you've got 3 employees and you say, hey everybody, um, how much would this cost to do? Like how much how many hours of your time do you think it'll take to finish this thing? Or you could put it in a sprint model, like who thinks they could finish this in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And someone raises their hand and says, I can finish it in 2 weeks. And it's like, great. And they're on salary.
Right.
So as soon as that person is done and the feature, let's say, is accepted, they're off. They're on
Right.
vacation. They can go do whatever they want. So the issue with this is that the manager person or the owner needs to be comfortable recognizing that there's unused productivity. Like usually the way managers think is like we want to get every bit of productivity out of every employee all the time, like it's a factory.
Right.
And I think that's the flip side. Like if you want to start paying employees in this kind of value-based model, you need to be comfortable with them only working 2 hours in 2 weeks or whatever. If they finish
Exactly.
something
Yeah.
amazing really quickly, and hey, if as long as it's done in 2 weeks, I'm happy. And so if you can finish it in 2 hours and then you get the rest of the 2 weeks off, you have
So
to
good.
not care about that.
Yeah. Which I think managers, they say they don't, but they definitely do. It's uncomfortable because they get resentful as they work harder and harder and harder, and people are working 2 hours a day.
Yeah, it would be a very complicated thing to see. The problem with just using the word employee, like full-time employee, it brings a load of expectations with it
Right.
that I feel like the word doesn't really map that well. And maybe the whole concept of an employee will become less common. I mean, it'll still be obviously, you still need people to work at McDonald's, but the idea of like it feels like things could become more contractory and more fixed pricey, in which case you don't have insight into what their schedule is anyway. I don't know. I'm gathering information on it. It remains to be seen what'll happen, but it feels like people are starting to think about things like this a lot more.
Yeah, like I pull up to a job interview and I'm like, and I'm asking the employer, what are you looking I'm bringing them through your sales
Right.
process.
hmm Yeah, it does work too. It works in an employment context as well.
Interesting. Yeah. And I mean that's why things like the 4-day work week are becoming popular and doable because employers are starting to look at we're not, 8 hours of you sitting down and 3 hours you're not effective at all because you're on Twitter just killing time. I might as well just not lie to myself and say you could probably get this done in 4 hours and just do whatever with your time. So I could see that happening.
Yeah. I mean, I think it takes an enlightened kind of boss, but they exist. Like I know people like this, and it sounds like I have some friends in Silicon Valley. It seems like it's coming more into this area where employers are like, I don't care when you work or how much you work, as long as you get this stuff done by next Friday, I don't care.
Yeah.
And it's you see it in other places. It's just not normal. It's not the expectation for an employee. An employee is supposed to be butt in seat from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And so using the word employee for this new thing, which is kind of like all outcome based, or like when you're done and you can go home, air quotes, you can punch out. Um, I think there will be people who adopt that. I think it's on the rise, but it's still very, very small.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, John, thank you for your time.
Hey,
I
my
appreciate it.
pleasure. Great to be here.
We're reading it. We're on the hour mark now, and I appreciate it. We got a lot of comments here, but I know that you're pretty busy. I got to jot over to another meeting as well.
Okay.
I appreciate it, and thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, my pleasure.
All right, guys. See you guys later.